Good morning, Rutherford County. We are so excited to be with you today. I'm here with my dear friend and brother in the Lord, Joe English. You're going to be moved by his testimony of a God just changing a life. My name is Butch Maltby. We're both members of Word of Faith Fellowship, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8:30 until 9 on WCAB, Joe, there have been these powerful testimonies of God changing a life. And Joe and I together have really carried for some time now, sharing about our lives have been changed from drug and alcohol addiction. And we're going to say very directly to you today, there's not a program, there's not a project, there's not a system, there's not a way that you can find eternal deliverance from all of the torment of addiction, Joe, unless you encounter the personal living God through his son, Jesus Christ. And so we're going to share today our journeys of how we fell into the sin of addiction, what God has been doing in our lives to change us. And at the very end, you're going to be touched, as I have been so regularly, by a song that Joe is going to sing, Your Love Never Fails. The love of God is what compels us to seek his will and his purposes. And we believe that if you open your hearts, if you're a tormented person, you can find that same help and hope and healing that Joe and I did. You know, we start with Scripture because God's Word is unshakable. Joe and I both are of the conviction that the opinions of man don't really matter, do they, Joe?
No.
No, they don't matter, but what matters is God's eternal Word. And so let's start out by going to God's Word and put a stake in the ground for something that we know to be true. If you have a Bible, open it to John 10, and it's verse 10. The thief comes only in order to steal and kill and destroy. I came, Jesus said, that they may have and enjoy life and have it in abundance to the full till it overflows. You know, in my life, Joe, one of the things that happened is I had some early childhood trauma. When I was 8 years old, my father sexually abused me. He was a violent man. I've told the story before in my testimony of once him coming out. He used to beat my mother, and I would try to get in between the two of them. But from the time I was little, I had a lot of adult responsibilities. And this one time I remember in particular, he used to put his fist through the wall in our sheetrock, homes that had sheetrock. And this one time in Virginia, he forgot it was plaster of Paris and put his fist into the wall, shattered all of his knuckles, broke his hand, went back to his room, went into the closet, got his 3 guns, put him in the car, put me in the car with him, with my mother screaming, the other children there, and he screeched off. He had a stick shift, and he wasn't able to shift the car, and so he kept hitting me in the head saying, shift it now, shift it now. He drove about 40 miles to an area that was wooded, and for the whole day, I sat there as a little boy and watched as he shot anything that moved, any animal, the squirrels, the birds. He had so much rage that was in him. And the combination of that sexual abuse and just the trauma of that early childhood put me in a place where I opened myself up to devils. And the demons that came into me were hyper-perfectionism, performance, everything that I did at that point in life. I said, you know what? I have to look out for myself. I have to accomplish things on my own. I have to do it in a way that takes care of me. And so I became a hyper-success-driven person. From the 4th grade on, I just kept achieving, and I was the class president every year. Our high school team was the national high school debate champions, and I had an appointment to the Air Force Academy, achievement oriented, turned that down, went to a school called Wheaton College. We were the national debate champions. Everything in my life was trying to fill a hole that had gangrene in it, and it came initially from those traumas when I was younger. And you know, after I got married for the first time, I went through a terrible divorce there, got remarried, and you know, Joe, about 21 years into a marriage with 4 children, what happened is that there were pains in my life that had never been dealt with. And Isaiah talks about us having wounds and the gangrene and the infection, you know, and God had never touched those areas because I refused to let him. And I grew up in a Baptist church, and I thought I was born again, but I wasn't, and ended up becoming a vice president for Pat Robertson. I was in the middle of all kinds of false religion. I was a workaholic that was doing things for God, but I didn't know Jesus. I had no knowledge of Jesus. And one of the principles at our church, Word of Faith Fellowship, that's so powerful is we can't give what we don't have. And I kept trying to give to people in ways where I didn't have anything to give to them. And so sadly, about 20 years into our marriage, it became clear our marriage was falling apart. We had 4 children. And I had news of something that was a tremendous breach of trust and loyalty in our marriage, and I didn't know what to do with the knowledge of that. And I was always on airplanes, 4.1 million miles on American Airlines to this day. I flew too many places in the work that I was doing, working for ministries mostly, ministries that people that are hearing right now would know. But you know what? There was a day, I still remember it, where I had a phone call and I had information that was given to me that was too painful for me to deal with. And I remember sitting up in first class, it was seat 1F, and I was on my way to Los Angeles, and it was a morning flight, Joe. And they came through and they said, "Would you like something to drink?" And I let the pain and the suffering that I didn't bring to Jesus open a door where I said, "Yeah, I'll take a drink." And I had a second, and I had a third. And that was the start. I'd been a casual drinker here and there. That was the start of my unholy alliance with the devil, who lied to me and said, "You can deaden the pain. You don't have to feel anything. But you could just go to that place where you don't really know about anything." And I became what they call a quiet alcoholic. In the midst of all of my pain, I kept reaching for a drink. I lied to myself and to other people by saying, "You know what? Yeah, I'm a sophisticated drinker. I'm a wine connoisseur. And all of these being lies. And I distinctly remember one time where I was hosting a breakfast for 1,200 Christian leaders across America, many of the names that you would know. And at 4:30 in the morning, I was nursing a second bottle of wine in my room. And I had to be the MC for that event. And I remember crying out to Jesus saying, "Please don't let me be an offense to your name. Don't let me be an offense to your name, Jesus." And God in his providence and plan spared me for the 2 hours that I had to be the MC. But I knew that I was in a deep and dark place. And it reminds me of Mark chapter 5, where it tells the story of the Gerasene demoniac. And I won't go through the scriptures, but I want you to go and take a look at it. What it says in Mark chapter 5 is they, meaning Jesus and the disciples, came to the other side of the sea, to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. And the man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with chains, for he had often been bound with shackles for the feet and with chains, and he tore apart the chains and broke the shackles into pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue and tame him. Night and day, he was constantly screaming and shrieking among the tombs and on the mountains and cutting himself with sharp stones. Seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before in homage. And then Jesus ends up delivering him, and his life is radically changed. The thing, Joe, that always challenged me so much in the scripture is tormented by 1,200 devils. He had enough of his will to step towards Jesus. Yeah. He stepped towards Jesus. And I went to alcohol rehab places that were no help at all. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings where I saw people that traded one addiction for another. They started smoking. They stopped drinking, but they started smoking. They stopped drinking, and they started to eat, and they blew up, as they say in North Carolina, like a toad. It was terrible. I watched all kinds of addictions being exchanged. Why? Because the core issue of your relationship with Jesus was not dealt with, and it wasn't dealt with in my life. And I had to go through some horrible experiences, including a near-death experience in July of 2012 that I've shared in my testimony that was powerfully impactful on my life. I was on a ventilator for a month. I almost died. They told me you'll have no high-function reasoning. I was up on a mountain in a cabin, drinking every day. I kept a couple of consulting clients. I lost everything in a terrible divorce. I was bitter. I was angry. I was talking to coyotes. I was writing what I thought was godly poetry, sitting out there looking up at the stars. I was communing with demons, with devils. And God in his providence and plan let me come through that. They said, you'll never talk again in ways that people will understand. You'll have no high function reasoning. And I'm a living, breathing testimony to the power of the living God to take a life that was so self-absorbed, self-contained, self-defined, and at the foot of the cross, at this church, Word of Faith Fellowship, to find the help and hope and healing that I needed. Now, people have often asked me, what was it, Butch? Well, it started out with a pastor who knew of all my systems and my ability to speak my way through things, who was very clear one day when she said, come now or don't come. And she knew that my life needed the power of that door number 1 or door number 2. It says over in, I believe it's Deuteronomy, I've set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life so that you and your descendants will live. The first time I visited here, Mark Morris, who's also a dear friend, told me I could smell the smell of alcohol on your breath. You know why? I didn't want to come to a church again. I've been to churches on every inhabited continent in the world. And when Mike Cohen, a Jewish guy, a friend, said, let's go to this church, I remember thinking to myself, well, I'll go, but I need to take the edge off. And I actually had drinks before I came. That's how dark and deep in the hole, Joe, I was. But God, through his providence and plan, including the powerful ministry of praise and worship at our church that you've been such a vital part of, started to do his surgical work and go deep into me until he found that place where I said, I want deliverance. And so slowly but regularly, I got prayer, strong prayer. It wasn't just choices on my part. It wasn't any of you that say, I had a bad childhood, that's why I take drugs. I had a bad childhood, I had a bad marriage, that's why I drink. That's an excuse. You need to get to the place where you understand that without the living God healing you and dealing with you with your sin, you will never find a place of peace and rest that he's promised us. And so you may be out there today asking the question, is there hope for me? There is. But you know what? You have to find Jesus worth the knowing. You have to be willing to get to the place where you say, Jesus, whatever will you have for my life, I'll embrace it. Whatever you want in my life, I will say yes to. If you have a buck, if you have a butt, if you have an excuse, if you're a victim, you will not find that place of peace and power and rest that God has promised. So it's been 3 years that I've been here, Joe, and they haven't always been easy. God's dealings are hard. We all have to get to a place where we come to understand that he's got to take over every part of our life. And as I often tell the children, don't let any area of your life be one that you take for yourself. God said to me, I'm going to demolish everything, Butch, that was in your life and build something new. And when we submit to him and yield to him, what happens is that God can take a life that was dank and dark and terrible and change it forever. And so I am so profoundly grateful, and it is an honor to be here with you because you're a brother in the Lord that was there at the beginning, and you've helped walk me through this, Joe, and I'm so grateful. And in the spirit of that, share your story.
You know, listening to Butch, a lot of similar things in my life. And when I found out I was going to do this program, I started to think back to situations that in my life, you know, like Butch was talking about with his dad, with the anger and the rage. And when I was 12 or 13 years old, I had a traumatic thing happen to me. It was a physical thing. I had a tumor in my ankle, and they did a surgery, and I found out later when I was older that I could have lost my foot. And I had one surgery, then I had another surgery, just backing up. At that time, I was in Little League, and I was really good at what I did, and I really liked it. You know, my dad would take me to the field, and you know, I never could hit it over the fence, but I could hit the scoreboard in center field every time. I never got it over the foot. I could hit center field, and I was a good fielder. But anyways, then I had that happen to my ankle, and I had surgery, and then I had another surgery. I had to wear a brace on my leg, and it totally wiped me out. I couldn't do anything. And then, on top of that, as I got older, when I got into high school, I wore a brace on my leg, and the children made fun of me. They called me crippled. They laughed. And, I look back, they had a lot of problems themselves, But I couldn't do anything. And I'm seeing, as you were talking, what happens is, with me, when I was younger, I was building a fence around me. I didn't want to have anybody hurt me. I didn't want to have anybody say anything. So I started to put this invisible wall around. And during that time, I was really, people told me, you're really gifted in music. They used to take me, and my friends would have me stand on a chair, and you people are my age, I'm 71, way back, they'd put the little 45 records on, and I would sing. I'd be on that chair, and they'd stand around me and clap, and I would sing, and I would sound this is a little guy.
Right.
I would sound just like, I could imitate just the person on the record, and then it went from that to, I took a test in grammar school. It's called the Seashore Test, and they told me that I had this really good musical ability. So my parents heard that, and they bought me a drum set. And in the world's eyes, I mean, I was good, even at a little guy. But I'm seeing this is good, when people get to share, and you hear what they say. When I told you I was putting a wall around me because I didn't want anybody to hurt me. I was tired of being wounded and hurt.
Right.
And now, when people tell you, when they go, you're a great guy. Oh, you're good at what you do. It makes you feel good. I didn't know God back there. I was raised in a Catholic home. My dad had really bad anger. He didn't like to work. And my grandfather's brother, back way before I was born, was a nightclub singer in the Prohibition days. And my grandfather, he worked on the railroad as a porter. I see all these things that were in my life that were carried right on to me. It's called a generational curse. But anyways, just having all these things, and then I had the music, and then it's like, it's something when somebody goes, you're a great guy. When on the inside, I'm not a great guy. But you like to hear that, and there's that wall. The wall is going up. You're not going to get in there. You're not going to touch me, and you're not going to hurt me ever again. So that was the beginning. Okay, and let me go back real quick. When I had that surgery, I was in the hospital for quite a bit of time. And they used to come and give me pain shots. It was very, very painful. Very painful what they did to my ankle. So they would come and give me a shot, and the pain would go away, and I'd feel so happy. But you know what? This went on, and it got to a point where I really, really liked the way it felt when they gave me that shot. I remember it like a tea. I'd be laying in that little guy. People, at night, it's not like somebody come and stay with you. I'm all by myself. This little guy in the hospital. They give me my shot. My dad would bring me the Times-Union paper. And I'd read the paper until the pain medicine worked, and I just go up and just go out. Then it came to the point where I didn't have any pain anymore, but I knew and understood what that feeling was. That feeling, it was an escape. It was that fence. It was a wall. I didn't want to be hurt. Not only that, I got this pain, but I started lying to the nurse. Can you give it to me? Oh, yeah. But I look back at that. That only went on for a little period of time. I look back at that. That was something. It was a demonic attack at a young age. That came in me. Now, you might not understand that, but that system came in me at a young age. And then I went through teens and all that and experimented with all kinds of drugs and just messed up. Everybody I was around, nobody was honest with each other. Everything was like a big facade. Everything was a big joke. And well, let me tell you what, when you went back home and you were by yourself in the bed and the light went out,
right,
I was a tormented little guy. And then just going back again, because even when I talk, I remember things that I haven't thought about in years. There was a point in my life where I didn't do good in school. Now, the music thing, I did great. But in school, paying attention, they took my mom aside and said, we need to take him and put him in a special school and a special thing. Because I couldn't take hold of my head, my brain. I just, was getting distracted. I'd get mad. I'd have tantrums. I'd lay on the floor. And my parents didn't know what to do with me. And I just thank Jesus my mom did not go along with that, because I don't know what would have happened to me. But I want to make sure that I get everything in. And
what started to change, Joe?
Well, and as I got older, I got into supposedly contemporary Christian music. Was not born again, messed up on drugs, going out doing the same thing, and it just everything was a mess. And then in 1990, I came here. A friend of mine, Ray Nino, who's been on the shows quite a bit, he knew that I needed help and I needed deliverance, so I came down here to North Carolina. But my lifestyle didn't change. Everything stayed the same. I'd get on drugs, I'd get off drugs. Get on drugs, get off drugs. And one day, God spoke to me. He said, Joe, you're going to die if things don't change. You're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your wife, who now, we've been married 44 years. This is years back. And he said, you're going to, because people were trying to help me.
Right.
This church, they lay down their lives, Butch, day and night. Please, Joe.
Right.
Please, Joe, you got to change.
Right.
You got to change.
Right.
I would change, and then I'd go back to my old ways. Change and go back to my old ways. Friends who loved me, pastor who loved me, would do anything for me. Anything, Yeah. Anything.
Right. Lay down their lives.
But you know what? The other day I was thinking about this. It's your will. I did not want to change. And when you set your will to do what you want to do, knowing that it's destruction. But when God came to me that day, he said, it's over.
Right.
God laid in here's the choice, Joe. You can go do what you want, and here's what's going to happen. Or you can submit your heart, and I'll change you.
That's it.
And I'll change you. I know at that point, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I am not going to do drugs.
Right.
I am not going to go to doctor after doctor after doctor and lie and con and connive to get my pain medicine.
Right.
And I could do it because I had things wrong with me. I had it down. I could con most of the doctors. But it was over. When I made that decision, that's it. I don't even have, from that point until this day, the devil doesn't even come to me with a thought to, hey, why don't you go do that? Hey, your foot really hurts. I don't even have that.
Gone.
It's gone. Far as the east is from the west, some people don't understand that. Gone. I'm going to tell this real quick because I want to get this in. I had shoulder surgery a couple years back, and I remember being in the hospital. It's a painful surgery, and it's called a reverse shoulder replacement. And I remember being in that room, and they come to me after the surgery. Do you need pain medicine? My shoulder was all numb from how they numb you up, and then all of a sudden, the numbness wore off, and that thing really started to hurt. And I laid there in that bed, and I said, Jesus, please help me. Mm-hmm. Then the next thought was, I called my pastor, Jane Whaley. I called her. I said, Jane, the whole thing is wearing off, and it's really hurting me. She prayed with me. I prayed. We got off the phone. She said, I'm going to keep praying. And you know what? That pain eased up.
Right.
I never took any pain medication. The nurse would come in and go, do you want something? And I said, I don't need anything. I'm not talking about I was making some big mental assent and I'm not going to... I didn't need it.
It's gone.
I didn't want it. I didn't want it. The nurse, I don't know how many times she came in. She'd come in and come in and come in. And she finally said, you don't need it, do you? I said, no, I don't need any pain medication. Now, y'all, you have to understand, that's a miracle. That's a miracle. When you have a reason, you can have it. I didn't want it. Right. Now, for all the reasons God shows me a little bit, I didn't want to open any doors, but I didn't need it. I needed Jesus.
Right.
Jesus showed up in that hospital room, and he eased my pain.
That's right.
No man can tell me, well, Joe, maybe you're just making that up in your mind or this or that. People have a lot of excuses. No. When you cry out to God, he answers you.
That's right.
Back when I made that decision, it was over. I said, it's over. Not only that, drug addiction, Butch, it's very selfish. It put my wife through hell.
Right.
It puts people through hell when they watch your life being destroyed and they want to help you and you won't let them help.
That's right.
You want to be your selfish own,
that's right,
demon-possessed
that's right,
person.
That's right.
Very selfish. So I get kind of excited on the inside when I talk about this because I can see the delivering power of God.
Well, you know what, Joe?
He can do it.
He can do it if you take hold of your will and you cry out to Jesus. In the spirit of that, we have a song that we're going to end with today.
Yeah.
Your love never fails. And if you're somebody that's dealing with addictions, there is hope, there's help, and there's healing. It's not a program. Joe is going to sing now, Your Love Never Fails. And as he goes, I want to remind you, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8:30 until 9 a.m. here on WCAB, you'll hear powerful testimonies like Joe has shared here today. Tune in and listen to that.
Your love never fails. It has covered a multitude of sin. Truly we have seen your mercies and your power to restore. Repairer of the breach, the restorer of my soul. No man can ever know such great love except through Jesus, as we have surrendered our lives. We have truly seen the love of God. Oh, what joy it brings to be dealt with as your true son. In your judgment we have found refuge and safety. We have loved your hand upon our life. Repairer of the breach, the restorer of my soul. No man can ever know such great love except through Jesus, as we have surrendered our lives, we have truly seen the love of God. As we have surrendered our lives, we have truly seen the love of God.